about the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps here. He's now called for defence spending to increase to 3% of GDP in order to counter the threat posed by Vladimir Putin and Russia. Joining me now is Conservative MP and a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Bob Seely. Good morning. Oh, sorry, afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to your listeners and viewers.
Now, an awful lot of people have been, in the military, have been saying we need to up our defence spending from 2% of GDP up to 3%. I mean, even the 2% thing was a bit of a stretch because it involves things like pensions for veterans, which, as important as it is, doesn't actually help our ability to fight a war. Grant Shapps saying this, is this him just sort of doing the bidding of, all the generals, the commanders? They'll be telling him that. He's getting in with them. Does he have any real expectation that Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, and the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, are going to deliver that?
Well, it depends when the election is. I'd like a May election because I think the Labour Party would be all over the place when it comes to presenting a manifesto. I think the likelihood is that we're going to go through to November, to mid-November, in which case there's the third financial statement, maybe in early autumn, in September, October, just before the election period. And it might be that we will then see increased defence spending. Look, I have to say I support increased defence spending. We've been living in a much more dangerous world, really, since about 2007, when Putin said, I'm fed up with this new world order. I don't like it. Since then, things have got worse. The Chinese have become markedly more threatening since 2015. We've had our heads in the sand collectively, the Western world. We know that. I would just say we need to grow the economy. And if we've got the tax cuts, and if it's going to be actually growing the economy, it is easier to pay for different things. I have some sympathy with Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, for not announcing particularly increased expenditure for defence, but absolutely we need it. We live in an incredibly dangerous
But the trouble with defence spending, it's always easy to spend money on, NHS waiting lists or in schools or anything else, than spend it on something that we don't see the benefit of. But it is like, I always liken this to like going, I'm going to save money and not have building insurance on or contents insurance on my home. When your home burns down, then you realise it was a cost saving, and it was an investment rather than a cost. And the reality is, as and when, and I think it's a when, not an if, there is a confrontation between NATO and either Vladimir Putin or somewhere in the Middle East or Xi Jinping in China over Taiwan, it's going to cost us a heck of a lot more to upgrade. We see, look, China already 9% of their GDP being spent on military. I mean, maybe that's a signal, everybody. They might be planning some action. Vladimir Putin, 30% of the Russian economy is now geared towards the war effort.
It's Russian government spending.
Yeah.
Russian government spending, sorry. Yeah.
But then you've got Poland. They're literally on the front line. Poland, up to 4% of GDP now. But they all seem to get a lot more bang for their buck, even if we upped our spending. Is there any evidence with our procurement efforts at the MOD we'd actually get the military hardware we need?
Two big points, just very quickly about procurement, which is the last point that you made. Okay, the Conservatives have done a lot of reform of procurement. It is getting into a much better place, but it has taken a very long time to get there. And defence procurement is something of a scandal. The problem is we want defence spending in this country and everyone campaigns on it and the Telegraph gets angry about it. And then when things cost twice as much, exactly the same people get angry about it. So that's slightly a problem, that we're squaring a circle, that we want the stuff done here.
We should have better negotiators.
Well, I tell you what we do need to do, because soldiers tend to rotate through a job every 2 or every 3 years sometimes. You get people rotating through a procurement job. They spend 6 months trying to find out what they're doing. They spend a year doing it, and they spend 6 months working out where their next job is. And so you get drift in procurement contracts where actually the producer becomes the dominant, a permanent partner, and then you have soldiers and generals who say, well, I want this bit of gadget and this thing.
And as soon as you change the contract, then the price doubles. Okay, but like, if we were
Can I just answer the second point? I'll just answer the second point as well. You're absolutely right. Look, World War I, World War II, we failed to deter our enemies. And the impact in blood and treasure on the UK, the British Empire, was extraordinary and was profound. So just twice in the last century, we've seen what happens when we don't deter. And the problem is Western democracies are not very good at deterring enemies. We're reasonably good at fighting a war once it's been declared because we rally together. But it's actually persuading people that there is a threat in the first place. Look, I've been banging on about this for years, so have other people. Unfortunately, it's difficult to actually translate.
Why is it though? Why don't people understand? It's like people don't understand that actually it was a massive failure of diplomacy and deterrence, the fact that Russia ever put a single steel cap boot into Ukraine, because if they'd known what the reaction was, they probably wouldn't have done it. But they didn't have the reaction in advance. Why are we in the West? Is it just this belief that, oh, well, we've lived with this wonderful peace dividends, everything's fine, people won't go to war? We are literally surrounded by countries that want to go to war. Why don't we get it?
I think for a couple of reasons. And one, there is an attitude, and this is why we went into Afghanistan. You either have to use it or you lose it. So we don't have the idea that we're going to spend this month as an insurance policy. And so the generals have tended to almost look for conflicts to justify their existence. That is, the result of that is very, very bad policy making, but also because, again, look, unless you're actually using this, it's seen to be a wasted cost. Yeah. You know, and I know that is a foolish thing to think. But until war is facing you, staring you down the barrel of a gun, and by then you think, oh, let's throw some money at defence. By then it's too late, because it takes months and years to build the planes, to train the troops.
And by the way, we won't be able to make the steel to do any of that anyway, because we're on mad net zero policy. Can I just ask you, before I let you go, and I want to get Philip Ingram's thoughts on what you've just said, but also just finally, Michael Gove announcing this new definition of extremism. You and I have spoken about this issue many times as well. I won't reiterate what it is. Everyone's been listening to it. He's actually announced a few extremist organisations. He listed them by name: British National Socialist Movement, so Nazis, Patriotic Alternative, both on the right. Also, Muslim Association of Britain, which is an association, British Association of the Muslim Brotherhood. Do you agree with the new definition? Does it go far enough? Does it go too far? What do you think? Just briefly.
I think we have a problem with delineating between hate speech, which incites violence, and idiots talking dribble. And idiots talking drivel, I'm afraid to say, is part and parcel of democracy. My worry in future is you're going to have a Labour government that says, oh, we don't like people who oppose trans. Let's see if we can stigmatise them. Let's threaten them with the
Michael
law.
Gove said that that group will not be included, neither will trans activists or indeed environmental protest groups. But that's the thing. Hey, I've already been branded an extremist by the government for opposing lockdown of vaccine mandates. They sent my information to a US counter-terrorism unit. So forgive me if I'm not that trusting of a Conservative government either.
Okay, well, I'm more trusting. I think as a good Conservative, I'm mildly sceptical of all governments. I'm incredibly sceptical of left-wing governments. I mean, look, this is the problem all over the Conservative right. The Conservative Party aren't perfect, but I'm afraid any alternative, be it a protest vote reform, which will let in Labour, or a Labour government, is going to be much worse. Okay. So the answer is we get the best Conservative government we can, not that we let in a bunch of left-wing idiots for 10 years.
OK, well, you can tell it's an election year, and you got that in. Bob Seeley there, he's a Conservative MP for the Isle of Wight. I'll get that in as well as member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Thank you very much.